To be perfectly honest, I don't really know how to start this video. Unlike all my other videos, this isn't about a singular character, but an entire story. In my last video, I talked about Lumen from Arknights and also went over pretty much everything about Stultifera Navis. But here, there is no central character to focus on, no singular lesson, instead a bunch of mini ones. I could have made a Sherlock video, but his mystery isn't fully solved yet, so I decided to leave that for later. The same could be said about Traum, but I would rather save a possible Sherlock video for later anyway, and to focus on Traum, maybe theorize a bit. It's hard to pinpoint what exactly makes the Traum singularity from Fate go so great, so the best way to go about it is to go over the story and try analyzing it. Either way, I don't want to spend too much time rambling in the intro, so let's first start talking about what exactly Traum is, and we will go from there. First of all, what is Traum? Well, Traum means dream in German, which brings up some questions that we don't really need to get into yet. And Traum is also a singularity in Fate Go. Singularities are events in history that never happened but happening now, mostly because of outside forces. The entirety of part 1 of Fate Go is about these singularities that sprouted because Goetia dumped a bunch of holy grails throughout human history, and let them cause havoc. But Traum isn't connected to any of those singularities and wasn't made by Goetia. What we do know is that Traum, as a singularity, is from 16th to 17th century North America. But weirdly enough, it doesn't fit that mold. It feels more European than American. Not only that, but no real humans inhabit the land of Traum. Not a single one. Instead, it's filled with servants, tens of thousands of them. For some reason, they all bear hatred against proper human history and desire to rebel against it. These servants have made 3 different nations, or as they put it, realms, all with their own ways of rebelling against proper human history. First, we have the Revenge Realm, ruled by Kriemhild. Other powerful figures include Zhangju, Salome, and Tomitomo. Kriemhild, in Germanic mythos, is the wife of Siegfried, the greatest of all dragon slayers. She is wrathful and hates Siegfried for reasons we will get into later. All you need to know is that while she is a berserker, she's surprisingly cunning. Her realm has the most servants under its belt, even if its army isn't of the highest quality. Next is the Reinstatement realm, ruled by Constantine XI, the last emperor of the Byzantine Empire. Other members of this faction include Pope John, Bradamante, and Kiyohime. Unlike the other 2 realms, the name of his faction doesn't really reveal much about him and his goals. Reinstatement could be anything, and the nature of his realm is a mystery for a while. While his realm has less troops than the Revenge realm, his soldiers are better trained and are of higher quality. Finally, we get into the Righteous realm, ruled over by Charles the Great, the father of Europe. Under him are some of his paladins, Stolf and Roland, plus some other high-powered servants, Diarmut and Jufu. He never shows himself and always stays behind the curtain with his trusty, secretive secretary. No one truly has seen him behind the curtain, which gives him an illusion of power and mystery. Out of all the rulers, he's undoubtedly the greatest and strongest. The other 2 simply don't have the same amount of fame as the man called the Father of Europe. Even so, he has the smallest army and the worst troops out of all the realms. The only strength his realm has is that the other 2 realms don't know exactly where it is, mostly stuck fighting each other. In the middle of all the realms is a large waterfall. not really belonging to any of the realms. Each of the realms also have their own holy grail powering up their leader. The most alarming thing about all this is the lack of masters. All servants need a master to keep them attached to the world, yet none exists as far as anyone can tell. Again, no humans are in this singularity, only servants. Not all of them are super strong or famous though. A lot of them wouldn't normally be summonable due to their lack of fame, but in this singularity, that doesn't matter. So while they are all servants, not all of them are, you know, Gilgamesh, King Hassan, or even Arash tier. Either way, I think that's enough exposition for now, so let's get on with the story. Several days had passed since the Chaldeans took down the 6th Lost Belt and also resolved all their Koyan problems. Now they were headed to their final destination, Mesoamerica. On the way though, a problem revealed itself. Out of nowhere, alarms started going off. The clairvoyant devices of Chaldea detected a massive problem, one that drastically lowered proper human history's verification levels. Basically, their plans of taking on David were forcefully put on hold. A massive singularity had formed, one greater than ever observed before. After an emergency meeting which goes over some information about the singularity, some basic stuff I went over in the last segment, it's decided that Rizka, the player, can rainshift into the singularity with 3 servants. One of the best qualified servants for this task is Sherlock Holmes. He has been a major character for basically all of Part 2 of Fate Go, being one of the only servants to stay after the end of Part 1.5. He is especially useful here because the Chaldeans know alarmingly little about this new singularity, which Sherlock should be able to help with because, you know, Sherlock Holmes. Another one is Mash, Rizka's first servant, but because of prior events, she's unable to join until a later date. And finally, that leaves us with Vlad the Third. For those that somehow don't know, in real life, Vlad the Impaler was a ruler of Wallachia around the 1400s for a while. He was one of the most important rulers of that region and is a national Romanian hero. He is mostly known for the war he had with the Ottomans, in which almost 24,000 Ottomans were impaled on stakes, as some sort of intimidation tactic to stop the Ottoman armies from invasions. As a pop culture thing, he also inspired Dracula, which is kind of hilarious. He was chosen as the 3rd servant after beating up all the other candidates, so no one has any problems with him joining. Despite all the bad rep, he's actually a pretty sweet dude, almost like some kind of advisor. Finally, one other person would be joining, another master like Rizka, and that was Kadoc. For people that don't know about Fate lore, all you need to know is that Kadoc used to be an enemy, had Anastasia as a girlfriend, and had been in a coma for a while now. He also used to have a pretty severe case of inferiority complex, but for now, he has taken his defeat in full grace, choosing to do whatever Chaldea wants, because he simply has nothing better to do. And also because they have put a death collar on him in case he does anything stupid. After some more rambling, the boys are sent to the pass to be summoned into the land of Traum. After all the Chaldea stuff, we transition into the different realms, the first peek into each of them, which I have already went over. The Chaldeans reshifted successfully, kind of, and they also successfully contacted Chaldea, making sure that communication with home is possible. Soon they started heading north into the closest possible town, to see if they could find out more about this singularity. There they find a destroyed, barren town. Or so it seems at first glance. Sherlock quickly deduces that this town they're in was built very recently. And by that, I mean it was built instantly a few days before. With Kadoc's help, the gang finds out that the whole town was built with magecraft, probably some caster. There were no traces of life anywhere in the broken town, no traces that it was ever occupied, no personality, like a bad movie set. All this presents a question: what destroyed this town? Sherlock hypothesizes that it was destroyed in a servant battle. Soon after, the Chaldean staff started picking up some servant signals approaching Ritska and the gang. But it's not just 1, 2, 3, or even 5 servants. It's 100 of them. Not things rivaling servants, actual servants. Not only that, another 100 servants started approaching the town from another angle. 2 different armies, most likely ready to fight one another. In a moment, Sherlock and Vlad decide to scatter to hide, while Reinstatement and Kadoc decide to hide under the rubble. With some magecraft trickery that Ritska is too cool to learn about, I guess, Kadoc fully hides the both of them. As they are hiding, Kadoc starts telling Ritska about his worthless puppy-killing magecraft to pass the time. I guess his pessimism is still there. Soon though, some servants with red armadas show up, belonging to the Revenge Realm. All from different eras and times. Cowboys, samurais, pirates, ancient Egyptians, whatever you can think. They start going to war with some troops from the Reinstatement realm. Kadoc and Ritska witnessing all of this happen, getting information from the soldiers secretly. The Revenge realm starts getting pushed back, simply not as strong as the Reinstatement realm. As I have said, the Revenge realm's strength comes from its numbers, so in this specific battle, they are outmatched. As the battle keeps going, the Righteous realm secretly ambushes the Reinstatement army, forcing them into a retreat early, and the whole battle ends in the favor of Charlemagne's victory. After the troops disperse, Sherlock and Vlad pick up Kadoc and Ritska, and they all share the infos they got to one another, most of which I don't really need to go over. One thing that both Vlad and Sherlock find interesting is the Righteous Realm's tactics. If they had chosen a better time, they could have taken out both the Revenge Realm and the Reinstatement Realm armies, but they didn't. Their timing was awkward, which allowed the 2 armies to disperse. Vlad would have done things differently. Most likely, the Righteous Realm army isn't as strong as one might expect. One thing to note is the miraculous nature of Traum. In this land, people of all cultures live together seamlessly. Servants from all kinds of backgrounds. If it wasn't for the whole 3-way war, it would have been a pretty crazy good world. Either way, after some time, some assassins find them and die pretty quickly at the hands of Vlad. Here, the Chaldeans figure out that they are enemies to the servants here, and that some sort of master is around, just that they can't tell where. Suddenly, the Chaldean staff pick a worrying signal, one belonging to an alien god disciple. If you want to know more about them, just watch my body video or read the screen. At this point, 2 of the 3 disciples were dead, but this person wasn't the last remaining disciple the Chaldeans knew. The nemesis of Sherlock Holmes, James Moriarty, his younger version, showed up as some kind of foreign disciple. Not foreign god disciple though, he makes that clear. As an act of power, he cuts off the Chaldea feed. He says that he needs to take care of a traitor, but that traitor is apparently not Kadoc. As Vlad tries to hurt him, Moriarty takes no damage. He took no damage from Vlad's double phantasm. All disciples are given different kinds of divinity as gifts, and Moriarty is no different. For whatever reason, Sherlock can't figure out this Moriarty. Sherlock can't deduce anything about him. As Vlad tries to hurt him again, Moriarty grabs his head and binds him, almost turning him into a proper human history rebel as well, just like the other servants of Traum. But in the last second, Vlad uses his noble phantasm on himself, staking himself to the ground, basically a ceiling. With that one move, he bought everyone enough time to run away, while also sealing himself to the demolished town, so that he won't rebel against proper human history. Moriarty leaves after that, leaving Vlad alone in the broken town, sealed in place. After the gang manage to run away, they get ambushed again, this time by Zhang. In real life, Zhang was the leader of the Yellow Turban Rebellion that started in 184 AD, which eventually led to the whole infamous Three Kingdoms fiasco. While he was real, there were some fantastical elements to him as a Taoist sorcerer. In the Singularity, he works for Kriemhild and is from the Revenge realm. As the gang is running away from him and some of his troops, Zhang manages to catch Ritska, separating him from Sherlock and Kadoc. Here, the story branches out a bit, with Ritska being taken prisoner and Kadoc and Sherlock scouting the other realms. For now, I would rather focus on Sherlock and Kadoc. They decide not to go after Ritska for now because, according to some of Chaldea's fate reading devices, they know that Ritska won't die at least until 3 days pass. They decided to put their faith in him. In the meantime, the two men decided to go to the Reinstatement realm to figure out what their whole deal is. They managed to sneak into the Reinstatement realm rather easily. At this point, Sherlock still has Moriarty at the back of his mind, a mystery he just has no understanding of. After carefully observing some of the passing servants, Sherlock theorizes that every servant in the Singularity has one singular master, mostly out of intuition. This is incredibly out of character for him because Sherlock never says anything until he has confirmed it. If he isn't 100% sure about something, he doesn't bother bringing it up. Either way, as they walk around, they see Constantine XI, the last emperor of the Byzantine Empire. He was an incredibly competent ruler, born at the wrong time, a man who did everything and only managed to delay the downfall of his dying empire. Here he was the leader of the Reinstatement realm. He was talking to his troops about the other realms until he saw Kadoc and Sherlock, and those two silently walked away. They get led to a church by a mystery servant which just so happens to be Pope John. For a long time it was believed that she was the only female pope, reigning for 2 years as a religious leader, around the 13th century. Nowadays she is mostly regarded as fiction because no records of her actually exist. She introduces herself, and Sherlock introduces himself and Kadoc as Chaldeans. It is a gamble, but it should be fine. They talk for a while and Pope John tells them about the Singularity, mostly things I have already covered. As they talk, they are about to be ambushed for like the 5th time already, but they get away quickly. Pope John convinces the assassins to let them go because she has, quote-unquote, gathered enough info about Chaldea anyway. At least, that's her reasoning. Mostly a secret excuse. After that, she leaves the church with Constantine for some political things. After the two Chaldeans manage to run away, Sherlock decides to share his analysis of her character. He could tell that she was intelligent, so she wouldn't even think of trying to secretly extract information out of the Sherlock Holmes. Most likely, that was her way of feeding information while also not being a traitor to the Reinstatement realm. After that, they decide to head to the Righteous realm to see if they can find a way to help Ritska. They do reach the realm but have no idea where the main base is. That is the one advantage Charlemagne has. No one knows where his realm truly is. Thankfully though, Astolfo, a Righteous Realm member, finds them, and the Chaldeans don't know him for whatever reason. I guess even the main story sees Agartha as filler, I don't know. Either way, Astolfo leads them straight to the Righteous Realm after they tell him they are from Chaldea. Surprisingly, the Righteous Realm seems to be the only ally of the Chaldeans. Guess they really are righteous. He takes them to Charlemagne, and Charlie tells everyone to leave, leaving only him and the Chaldeans, and a few trusted servants. He also has an Atlantean owl from Lost Belt 5, which really confuses Kadoc, but he doesn't mention it. Charlemagne reveals that he had planted spies in the Revenge Realm, and that owl was sent to signal them to free Ritska somehow, to break him out of prison. In turn, the Chaldeans would help the Righteous Realm. This is a terrible deal for the Righteous Realm because they would lose a lot of spies for very little help. Yet Charlemagne proposed a deal. Sherlock is really suspicious about Charlie though, not in a this guy is an enemy way, but in a this guy is hiding something way. Kadoc and Sherlock get led to their rooms, awaiting the good news. Meanwhile, we get one last scene with Charlemagne and his secretary, and it's clear that he isn't actually Charlie but someone else. A servant that, for whatever reason, is indebted to Chaldea. For now though, let's leave all that and go back to Ritska. While Ritska is getting taken to the Revenge Realm, he starts to learn about some of his captors. There is the 100 Years War Saber, the Rider of Sicily from the land of the Mafia, the Archer of Vienna, and some others. Zhang is there too, of course. The Rider decides to kill some time by talking with Ritska. Actually, him and the Saber are really curious about Ritska and treat him rather well. And so, Ritska starts making friends with the enemy servants for whatever reason. They get ambushed, this happens a lot, by the Reinstatement realm soldiers, but they quickly win, losing only the Archer of Vienna. RIP. The sky turns red as they reach the Revenge realm, and Ryder makes sure to give Ritska a quick tour of the realm before taking him to the castle. There, Ritska is confronted by Kriemhild, the leader of the Revenge realm. As I have said, she was the wife of Siegfried, but after his sacrifices, was led down the path of endless revenge. She got into problems with a lot of people after Siegfried's death and was eventually killed herself. She hates Siegfried with a passion for leaving her for his own quests, and her only want in the singularity is to wait for him to get summoned just so she can kill him. After some time, she orders Ritska to be sent to the dungeon so that they can execute him after a few days. She wants to make it a spectacle. Ryder carefully takes him there and, after a solid goodbye, leaves him in a cage. He isn't the only prisoner around though. There is also a servant by the name of Seton, or so he calls himself. Ritska can't see him, but by the tone of his voice, he seems to be a rather jolly fellow. Seton starts to make some small talk, talking about how weak he is, and also tells Ritska that he is one of the only servants that are with proper human history, and not a rebel. They talk for a really long time until Ritska passes out from the lack of food and water. He dreams about the bleached earth from the perspective of someone important. I will use this for theories later at the end of the video. Thankfully, he gets saved by Salome in the game known as Outside Real Life. Salome was a Jewish princess responsible for the death of John the Baptist in the Bible. So, insane woman. She brings him fruit and is actually rather nice despite being a berserker. Like the other servants, she's also curious about Ritska and wants to hear his stories. So he does exactly that and they bond. Seton doesn't really know how to feel about it, but as long as she doesn't harm Ritsuka, he doesn't care too much. She leaves to get food and Zhangju shows up to torture Ritsuka for information. She stops him though because she needs to feed Ritsuka first before anything. She convinces him not to torture, and he leaves Salome and Ritsuka alone. They bond and don't really do much more. Outside that, we learn more about Zhangju and his view of Kriemhild. He truly respects her power. How she seduced a foreign king, led armies, instigated rebellions, and wielded a sword not meant for her at all for the sake of revenge. Her determination is strong and he respects it, with no desire of betraying her. At least for now. He says all this to a traitor and kills him. Sometime later, Salome is excited to meet Ritsuka again, bringing him more food to eat. But once she reaches his cell, she saw servants all surrounding the poor boy, as they all were having fun listening to Ritsuka's stories. It was Ryder, Saber, and some of their other friends, which goes as Berserker from Europe, Archer from Greece, Anonymous Lancer, Alchemist Caster, who no one has heard of, and Assassin, which is an assassin cause of reasons. They were sent to extract information from Ritsuka, but they couldn't help but listen to his stories instead, as explained by Ryder. So they all became friends instead. Salome was bewildered, but reluctantly accepted the circumstances. And so, time passes, Ritsuka is still in jail, but also having fun, I guess. Soon though, things were going to change. The reason why Kriemhild is fine with Salome spending time with Ritsuka is that eventually, Salome will have no choice but to kill Ritsuka. Everyone Salome loves will eventually turn into John the Baptist to her, and once that happens, she will want to keep their head as some sick sense of love. There are weirder fetishes out there. That is the madness which makes her a berserker, and right now she is in the process of seeing him as John the Baptist. Day after day she brings him food, talking to him, bonding with him. Ryder is also always standing guard to watch over Ritsuka. Soon though, it is revealed that Ryder and his friends are actually the spies from the righteous realm, the ones that are meant to save Ritsuka. Salome goes to make some food with the help of Berserker of Europe with Ritsuka. Berserker takes a portion to give to Kriemhild, while Salome gives the rest to Ritsuka. Before he leaves, Berserker tells Ritsuka, "Good luck." As they head back to the cell, Salome and Ritsuka are ambushed by Ryder, with them trying to take down Salome so they can safely rescue Ritsuka. But after Ritsuka eats Salome's horrible food, she decides to defect and starts helping the gang of servants. So they leave with Berserker buying time by causing havoc in front of Kriemhild, though he doesn't last long and dies rather quickly. Their escape is soon discovered and a bunch of servants start tailing the gang while Ryder is taking Ritsuka out of the realm. As they keep going, Anonymous Lancer gets ensnared and is forced to fight in place, with the Archer of Greece helping him out. Soon they die as well. After they travel some more, the unknown caster gets off Ryder's chariot and starts using his magecraft to make a swamp to slow down their pursuers. He fails though and is killed by Zhangju. In all this chaos, it gets revealed that Seton managed to run away as well. As the gang keeps running, Ryder gets poisoned by a thrown dagger, slowing him down a bit. Saber also decides to sacrifice himself, taking down the strong pursuer with Salome's help, which leaves Salome, Ritsuka, and Ryder. Salome is in a terrible state and might kill Ritsuka at any moment out of madness. Soon they reach Assassins, rendezvous point, but all they see is his almost dead body, telling them to run away. Another one down. They get ambushed by some Revenge Realm troops, and Salome thankfully takes care of them. But in the process, she loses herself and starts seeing Ritsuka as John the Baptist, as a hero, a saint, a legendary figure that should only be respected. She starts to yearn for his head. Ryder is also close to death and decides to fire his noble phantasm into the sky as one last gamble to signal their allies for help. He leaves Ritsuka to Salome and, after firing his noble phantasm, dies. As they run though, Salome glimpses into Ritsuka's eyes, falling fully into her berserker states. Holding him in place, she asks him for the one thing that matters, his precious head. But his answer shocks her. I still want to live. He starts begging for his life, like a complete loser. This was outside of Salome's expectations. John the Baptist is not a pathetic man, he is a legendary saint, not someone that would embarrassingly beg for his life. So Ritsuka could never be John the Baptist. She could never love Ritsuka like she loves John. And so she snaps out of her state. She keeps carrying him to safety to the righteous realm. She keeps fighting as servants, getting more and more worn down. In her arms, Ritsuka passes out and gets confronted by Moriarty. Here, Moriarty's goal is revealed to an extent. He wants Ritsuka's seat. I will talk more about this later, but for now, back to Salome. Finally, she takes him out of the Revenge Realm, and Astolfo spots them because of Ryder's double phantasm, ready to take Ritsuka back to the Righteous Realm. Salome decides to stay, making up some excuses. In truth, she too was about to die after all the battles. She wasn't going to survive. She goes back into the Revenge Realm and, out of nowhere, gets shot by a gunlock, killing the last of Ritsuka's helpers. And so, Ritsuka finally gets taken to safety, to the Righteous Realm. He gets reunited with Kadoc and Sherlock. They all tell each other about their experiences so far, and start going over everything they know. It's clear that Charlemagne is on proper human history's side. Unknowingly though, that is kept a secret from most of the servants. The Righteous Realm still believes that they are also rebelling against humanity, but Charlemagne isn't actually planning on anything like that. Astolfo and Roland, both paladins of Charlemagne, take the gang to meet Charlie again. Before anything, Charlie asks about their servants that helped Ritsuka. Clearly, he cares about his people. Their death saddens him, obviously. After that, Sherlock decides to simply ask Charlemagne to reveal himself because obviously he is not Charlemagne. In reality, the ruler of the Righteous Realm is Don Quixote, the most famous knight in all of fiction. I don't think I need to explain him. His secretary is actually an extension of himself. He calls her Sancho, but in reality, she's a mix of different characters from his book, from Rosinante to the attendant to the princess and many other characters. Together, Don Quixote and Sancho make up a Lancer-class servant. They aren't actually that strong despite their fame, and that is because Don Quixote was never a great knight. He was always an old man caught up in his own delusions. He's just a frail-looking old man, nothing more. Still, he isn't a weak servant. His fame still takes him quite far. After their introductions, they talk about how exactly they found the Righteous Realm. And also, at this point, it will only take several more days until people figure out that Charlemagne isn't actually Charlemagne. The righteous realm is in a very rough state. At the end of the day, most of the servants of Traum want to rebel against proper human history. From there, Kadoc proposes a theory. Servants are very strongly influenced by their master. An evil master will make an evil servant. Their minds affect each other, so an evil enough master might be able to make the servants into proper human history hating machines. Moriarty is the first name that comes to mind, but Sherlock has nothing to say about that. He truly cannot understand this Moriarty no matter how much he thinks. He guesses that Moriarty isn't the master, but can't say much more. In the end, everyone decides to tackle the singularity by gathering all three grails because the master's whereabouts are completely unknown. The righteous realm is by far the weakest realm, so things are going to be tough. After the gang goes back to the room, they meet Zhufu. In real life, Zhufu was a Taoist working under Xinji Huang, the first emperor of China. She was sent away to find an elixir to immortality, but never went back. Here, she is a reliable righteous realm member, sent to help the Chaldeans. As a cover, both Kadoc and Ritska are disguised as casters. Kadoc with his beast-killing magecraft, and Ritska with his shadow servants. Another character that is meant to help Chaldea is Diarmuid, an Irish hero with a love mold that made everyone fall in love with him. That is all you really need to know. His role in the singularity isn't that big. Their mission for now is to take hold of an abandoned stronghold. Not much more for now. With that, the party has finally found a footing. At night, Kadoc wakes up Ritska and takes him outside to discuss some things with him. And Mash, her hologram. Here he goes over some of the things that have happened before Traum. I really don't know how to tackle this part, but I'm gonna try. Because of circumstances, we know that Chaldea has a traitor. One of the members of Chaldea is not to be trusted. The problem is, no one has shown any signs of betrayal. No one has a motive either. Mash has thought about it a lot, but no one is in any way suspicious. Kadoc, though, suspects Sherlock. I don't really want to go over a lot of this Sherlock stuff because there is already a lot of history there. Instead, in the future, I will make a Sherlock video that will basically go over everything about him, from the mystery of his summoning to pretty much everything else. For now, I want to focus on Traum as a standalone story. For now, know that Kadoc finds Sherlock suspicious. After their talk, Kadoc tells Mash to go find a scroll to forget about the conversation, and clears Ritska's memories of the night as well. There is no way they can keep their suspicions a secret from Sherlock. So this is the best way to go about things. The next day, the gang goes out for some preparations, and Ritska spots Seton. He managed to escape the Revenge Realm as well, and is simply chilling in the Righteous Realm for now. He is an important character, keep him in mind. After that, the gang, plus Zhufu and Diarmuid, head out and find a tall tower belonging to the Revenge Realm. There are troops stationed in it, so the gang decides to use stealth to look around. Inside, they find some documents detailing how the tower is connected to a magical ley line, most likely meant to power something, but they have no idea what. After exploring the tower a bit more, Sherlock hypothesizes that the tower is meant to shoot a significant amount of magical energy to combat the Righteous Realm, and that there is no cannon on it, so it's clearly not finished yet. Right? From there, they leave the tower and continue exploring around, doing mostly meaningless things. In the Reinstatement realm, Constantine is also aware of such towers, sending out his troops to investigate and destroy them. The Revenge Realm is also sitting back and watching things happen at the moment. This whole part is mostly just fluff and more details about certain characters that I will save for later. For now, let's go to the next section. Remember Vlad? It's finally time to go and get him back. Don Quixote is excited to see an actual king so that maybe he can take his place. You see, Don Quixote really doesn't like acting like a king. It stresses him out, and he just wants to be a knight and serve a king, not be one. That tactic wouldn't work though, because Vlad and Don Quixote are too different and people would be able to tell. Still, Don and Sancho have a way of saving him, so this time around they will help out as well. Their normal phantasm has a 30% chance of working, 50% chance of not doing anything, and 20% chance where everything goes wrong. It's a gamble, but it's worth a shot. The gang plus Don and Sancho head out, and they get to talking. On one hand, you have Kriemhild, a fearsome woman that is vengeful incarnate. Constantine, which managed to keep a dying empire alive for so long, and finally, Don Quixote, an old schizo farmer. Really goes to show why leadership is important. At least he's trying his best. Eventually they find Vlad and they get to unsealing him. It's not easy though. In the split second when Moriarty was about to turn him into a rebel, not only did he seal himself, but he also programmed himself to fight anything that comes near him. So while he is staked and unconscious, he impales everything around him. After a grueling battle, Don manages to use his noble phantasm, which is basically that one step back to reality meme. That's the best way to explain it. Everything in the vicinity turns to normal countryside Spain. No magecraft, mysteries, just Spain. It puts both him and Vlad at risk, but it works well enough anyway. Vlad wakes up finally, and now he's back in the gang. He's much weaker now though, and won't be able to fight anymore. Still, he's useful. Don and Sancho are weaker as well now, but only temporarily. Either way, the most important reason why Vlad was needed is that he was a king, an exceptional one at that. He was also a military man and knows how to train soldiers. With him, the Righteous Realm's power will increase drastically. After they head back, Vlad is embarrassed to see the state of the army. The Revenge Realm is filled with mostly meatheads and lots of servants, which is what makes them strong. The Reinstatement Realm is filled with discipline, which is why their quality is so high. The Righteous Realm has neither, and every servant in it has some hero complex because, they're all servants, and don't work well together at all. As Vlad puts it, even in the most ideal situation, they would not be able to win. So Vlad puts everything on the table. He will trick all the servants into training. Don will stay as Charlemagne and the rest will also start training. Vlad is strict as you can tell, he also knows what he's talking about. After that, everyone gets dismissed and everyone goes to sleep. At night, Ritsuka is joined by Don and Sancho, and they start talking. Don talks about himself and how much of a coward he is. If he was in the Revenge Realm, he would have gone insane. In the Reinstatement Realm, things wouldn't have been much better either, so he ran to a place uninhabited. There, a bunch of like-minded servants showed up, and the Righteous Realm was born. Another thing is that Don can only be an old man. Servants are normally summoned at their prime, but because Don's story starts and ends with him as an old man, he can only be an old man. He hates being Charlemagne because it makes him scared. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want people to find out about him because if they do, they will most likely kill him. After they talk more and more, Ritsuka finally leaves to go to bed. I want to go over one other thing about Don that gets revealed later. His origin. In actuality, he was never a Traum servant. He was one of the servants summoned in Atlantis, Lost World 5. Go watch my video. At first, he was excited to finally go on a real adventure, to be a true knight. But things didn't go as planned. In Atlantis, servants were getting killed left and right. Even a hero like Heracles got destroyed by the Olympic gods. So, he ran. Sancho took him out of the danger and they ran out of the lost boats and, after a while, ended up in Traum. At first, he was fine with running away. That is until he found out that the Chaldeans actually managed to conquer Lost Boat 5, which is why he feels such disappointment towards himself, wanting to know where all his courage went. He feels really bad about all of that. Throughout the singularity, it's clear that he wants to apologize to Ritsuko about it, but he just can't find the time. He's cowardly and he hates that. This is all revealed later, but I feel like this is the perfect place to put it. Either way, on to the next section. Using trickery, Vlad convinces the Righteous Realm troops to start training, fully putting him in charge of the troops as a sole general. The gang gets to talking again, and to Vlad, targeting the Revenge Realm is the best course of action. Unlike the Reinstatement Realm, they are unpredictable, so it's better to get rid of them first. He also theorizes that the towers of the Revenge Realm are already complete, and that some sort of servant is the canon. The best way to go about things would be to assassinate Zhang, because he's most likely in charge of all the annoying things. And so that is the next plan. Here we also meet another delightful character. Shonen protagonist assassin! He's exactly how he sounds. All we know is that he's a Hassan and not much more. He's also aware of Ritsuko and Kadoc's statuses as masters, so they don't have to keep anything a secret. I'm pretty sure. Next, we also get a scene with Joanna. I think this is a good time to talk about her and her motivations. The whole thing about Pope Joan is that she isn't real. What I mean by that is that she isn't like Constantine, who was a real figure. She's more like a deity. For a long time, people believed in her existence until around 16th century. Until then, she existed as a real person, but after that, she was regarded as fiction. She hates the people that did that to her, but also understands them and knows that her hatred isn't exactly reasonable. She also doesn't believe herself worthy of worshipping her god because of her nature as an imagination. She's lost and really doesn't know what to do. She dislikes proper human history, but also feels incredibly guilty about going against it. One of the friends that she made in the Reinstatement realm is Bradamante, another one of Charlemagne's paladins. She believes in the Reinstatement realm, which is why she isn't at the Righteous realm. She comforts Joanna when she has doubts, and they are mostly good friends. Bradamante doesn't doubt her own existence. She and her love for her husband, she mentions him a lot, like constantly, were certainly real to her. But Joanna is different. Pope Joan simply never existed. At least someone like Bradamante can exist alongside her more supernatural stories, molding into one. Pope Joan doesn't have anything like that, which is why they can't relate. The academics were meant to find out more about her and found out that she didn't exist. All in all, fair. She still dislikes it and feels guilty about that dislike. Either way, let's get back to the main gang. Their goal? Assassinate Zhang. Zhufu will be helpful as a fellow Taoist, and Shonen Assassin will be good because... Assassin? I'm sad that I can't talk more about Zhufu because I do like her, but most of her presence is fluff, which I'm mostly skipping. Let's not get sidetracked. With the use of scouts, the gang knows about Zhangju's patterns. Sometimes he goes to a fort by himself and some servants. If the gang wants to assassinate him, that would be the perfect time. After some more planning, mostly done by Sherlock because he does everything in this Singularity. They get prepared. The night before they head out, Ritsuka has another chance meeting with Seton. Seton is still keeping himself a secret, waiting for the right moment to unveil himself. For now though, he is just chilling, not really doing anything. Now let's go over the assassination of Zhang. The people who are sent for the operation are Ritsuka, Jufu, Shonen Assassin, Sherlock, and Astolfo, who leaves quickly because he was only a guide. On the other hand, Vlad starts leading around 5,000 troops to go and attack the Revenge Realm to keep them occupied, basically a distraction from the assassination. Kriemhild decides to meet the army with 10,000 troops of her own, and a battle begins between the two armies, though that's not important. Fort Azagok, let's go with Azagok, was a fort that Zhang had to look over for two reasons. One, there was something taboo to the Revenge Realm there and something he had to supervise, and two, if he ever wanted to rebel against Kriemhild, it would be the perfect place to stay. Despite how much he respects her, at the end of the day, she's still just a berserker. At some point, they would have to go against each other. But despite all his wisdom and planning, he had no way of predicting this assassination, for two reasons. One, he could never imagine another great Taoist to be against him, and two, he would never imagine that one of his opponents was the great detective. And so, the invasion of Fort Azagok begins. Stealthily, the gang eliminates servant after servant, moving deeper and deeper into the heart of it. And soon, the gang reaches their target. He isn't too surprised to see them though, and begins fighting the gang after some conversations. During the fight, Sherlock realizes something. This Zhang isn't the real Zhang, and after taunting Zhang with his knowledge, Zhang loses it. Surprisingly, Zhang only figured out that he's only a puppet created by the real one as soon as Sherlock brings it up. After that, the gang overtakes him and kills him. Weirdly though, his final word is Master. Keep that in mind. It was no time for rest though, because after the puppet Zhang died, the fort started collapsing and the gang needs to leave quickly. And so the assassination attempt went semi-perfectly. While Zhang is still out there, at least they destroyed his fortress. On the way back though, one of the characters still feels uneasy. Why has he not reappeared? Such thoughts are going through Sherlock's mind, still unable to understand Moriarty, the only mystery he has zero answers to. Even such thoughts are things that Moriarty is predicting perfectly. Moriarty understands Sherlock completely, and he knows that Sherlock will never unravel this singularity. In contrast, everything is going well to Moriarty. After all, he is the one who will kill Sherlock Holmes. The gang returns to the Righteous Realm at the same time as Vlad, both having accomplished their jobs to an extent. They rest and party over their victory. Still, the gang knows frighteningly little about this singularity. No clue of the master, the origin, the person responsible, Moriarty. Still, too many things are left in the air. Thankfully, Moriarty decides to invade Ritsuka's dream again, so that's cool. He is blunt. He despises Ritsuka. Just like many other Part 2 antagonists, he sees Ritsuka as evil, eradicating world after world, watch my Oberon video for some context, with no signs of stopping. He understands that Ritsuka has no choice, but he also understands the Chaldeans deeper than that. They are kind-hearted, not bad people. For now they will be fine, they can handle the guilt, but the sorrow that comes afterwards would be a lot of pain to take. He knows that Ritsuka will get crushed under it all, which is why he doesn't like him. Ritsuka wakes up with no memories of what just happened, and the gang starts to party again for some reason. The gang gets to talking, mostly fluff. Yufu talks about why she chose the Righteous Realm, with the Revenge Realm being too wild and the Reinstatement Realm having Constantine. She doesn't like him because he's too perfect. Going off of that, Sherlock decides to reveal Constantine's goals, having figured them out. It's in the name. He wants to reinstate Pope John into history. Why? He doesn't know. Shonen Assassin figures that Constantine must just have a crush on her. Truly a shonen protagonist. It might not be a very Pope thing, but it's certainly a possibility, especially if Pope John wasn't a real Pope. After that, Yufu starts rambling while drunk, and that scene ends there. In the Revenge Realm, Zhangju pops back out, very confused. After Kriemhild gives him some notes, he figures out that he must have died. From there, he gets back to work. In the Reinstatement Realm, Pope John gets a revelation from God. If they fight the Righteous Realm, they will win. After seeking some help from her and Bradamante, Constantine decides to start the war. At this point, his realm has pretty much figured out that Charlemagne is not the ruler of the Righteous Realm. It's not confirmed, but very likely. Bradamante knows Charlemagne, which helps a lot in figuring that out. He was never a timid guy, never so cautious. Astolfo and Roland also have a good reason for following this impostor. The Paladins live by their ideals. If they believe that this impostor has a good reason for it, they wouldn't mind him posing as Charlemagne. Actually, same goes for Charlemagne. He too would think that way. And so, Constantine sends a war letter to the Righteous Realm. There is a way that he can not only boost the morale of his troops, but also lower the morale of his enemies, by forcing the ruler of the Righteous Realm to show himself. If he openly accuses him of being an impostor, the fight is over, and so the gang faces a problem. They can probably propose an advantageous battlefield for themselves. Constantine wouldn't mind. The problem is showing Charlemagne. Don Quixote is simply too normal to act like the father of Europe, so his act pretty much ends here. Vlad, Astolfo, and Roland are known figures, they wouldn't work either. Which leaves two options, Sherlock and Ritska. Ritska is the best option not only because of his charisma, but also because he has actual powers with his shadow servants. He has commanded many heroes throughout different battlefields. He has what it takes. Sherlock will help him too. Sancho proposes a different idea, running away. This fight is going to be rough and they will most likely lose. The sensible thing is to run away, but that wouldn't work either because the singularity needs to be taken care of. Fighting is the only option. And so Vlad starts preparing for the war as the general. Astolfo and Don with Ritska to keep him safe. Sancho and Sherlock for the war negotiations. Sherlock sees the Plains of Ani as the best battlefield fitting with the criteria provided by Constantine. And so let's talk about the battle of Sirmium, Righteous versus Reinstatement. Vlad, with his gigantic balls, decided to visit Constantine himself as the messenger. He even tells Constantine that he has no servant powers. Constantine questions his choice, but Vlad feels confident. He has already trained his army, and if Constantine does anything to Vlad, their reputation would be tarnished, something that Constantine cares about. He's chivalrous anyway, he wouldn't do such things no matter what. Instead of the Plains of Ani, which separates the two realms, Vlad wants to fight in Sirmium. This is a surprise to Constantine. He knew they would refuse to fight in Plains of Ani. He expected them to choose somewhere else in their own realm to fight, to have better defenses. He would have accepted that because it would make Charlemagne look cowardly. Instead, Sirmium is in the Reinstatement realm. He had no choice but to accept. It used to be a town made by casters, but it had been destroyed. He sent assassins to investigate and saw that a castle had been built from that ruined town. This was a problem. This would make exposing Charlemagne much harder. Of course, to him, there was also the chance that this Charlemagne is real, but he has no way to know. And so, everyone starts preparing for war. Other than Kadoc. He believes that something is still in Fort Azagok, so he will go check on that as the war goes on. In the meantime, Ritzka and Roland survey the castle one final time before the battle. They spot Seton again and Roland runs away instantly, not even knowing why. So, Seton and Ritzka get to talking once again. As Seton sees it, there's only a 3/10th chance of winning. Not terrible, not great. He also tells Ritzka that Pope John will most likely show up, and to relay that info to Vlad and Sherlock. After that, Roland walks back to Ritzka and they go back to Ritzka's room to drip him in kingly outfit. The Reinstatement realm has 8,000 troops, which is quite a lot. Ritzka tells Sherlock about Pope John, and Sherlock reveals something about her that he just knows, I guess. Pope John is not a Traum servant. What I mean by that is that she doesn't have the same master as all the other servants. Most likely, she is one of the servants summoned by the counterforce to combat the singularity, which is one of the reasons why she feels such guilt. She is not influenced by any master's will, yet she is fighting against proper human history. Now let's talk about the actual battle, not the setup. 3,000 on the vanguard, 3,000 in the middle, and 2,000 in the rear, with Constantine leading the vanguard. Sherlock theorizes that he isn't actually gonna fight, not with weapons at least. He's leading just to talk, to expose Charlemagne. With the help of Astolfo, they come up with a makeshift megaphone so that Ritzka can talk without showing himself. Sherlock gives him a script which sets the stage. The Battle of Words begins, with Constantine requesting an audience, which Ritzka declines, because Charlemagne is better than that. Constantine calls him a coward, to which Ritzka starts exposing his plan. Constantine wants to slander quote-unquote Charlemagne as an imposter, which would only work if Charlemagne was an imposter. If he wasn't, and if he was the real deal, the Reinstatement realm would instantly lose. The troops would give up because of the prestige Charlemagne has. It's a gamble that Constantine decides not to take, choosing to fight without having an audience with Charlemagne first. Even if he believes that this Charlemagne is fake, it's better not to risk it. And so the battle begins, this time for real. Everything falls on Vlad and the army. Now let's talk about the castle. The east gate is covered by forest, while the west gate has stone watchtowers. The northern gate, which is the closest to Constantine's army, is empty. At least that's how it looks. The south gate is simply too far to be viable. Normally, the north gate would be the obvious choice, but Constantine knows better than that. Most likely, the northern gate is filled with traps, so instead, he decides to wait until nighttime and attack the eastern gate and western gate at the same time, with a middle guard as backup. Worst case scenario, he will lead the vanguard himself, all of which were within Sherlock's predictions. In the best situation, the Righteous Realm would take care of the vanguard in one fell swoop, which would leave the Reinstatement Realm with no choice but to flee. But because of that, the Reinstatement Realm would be very cautious, even cowardly. To protect the Eastern Gate, they left Diarmuid and Jufu. Jufu is essential there, and as long as she holds up her Taoist arts, the East Gate will remain untouched. On the Western Gate, they decided to leave Astolfo and Roland. That gate isn't as complicated, so putting the two paladins there would be the best option. Both gates also have other troops, the western one having more. And so it turns night, the Reinstated army finally going on the offensive. For the first round, Constantine sent 750 servants to the eastern side. Shufa and the rest of the servants expertly hold them back with their illusion arts. On the western gate, the battle starts with a bunch of archers shooting at each other, and Astolfo scouting ahead as the only flyer. After things start looking bad, Roland heads out taking care of the berserkers that are trying to break the gate. After a while, he gets tired and "Shoot an assassin!" drags them back. Vlad sends reinforcements to help them, and by reinforcements I mean Ritska as a caster. After some time, the Reinstatement realm withdraws. The first round of battle being a righteous realm victory. The Reinstatement casters figure out the origin of the Eastern Gate bounded field, and should be able to take care of it later that same day. Constantine decides to join the battle, fighting on the Western Gate. The soldiers from the Middle Guard will attempt to go through the Northern Gate. After some scouting, Constantine found out that the Northern Gate really is empty, and so he devises a new strategy. He will burn the forest guarding the Eastern Gate, send troops to the Northern Gate, and demolish the Western one. He will attack all three gates at the same time. Pope John volunteers to be the one to lead the charge on the Northern Gate, while a certain fiery servant will burn the Eastern one. He himself will also attack the Western Gate. In 2 hours, he will attack once again, which is really bad because Ritska was just about to sleep. Vlad calls everyone for an emergency meeting and the gang gets to talking. At this point, it's clear that Constantine never meant to finish this quickly. He always wanted a series of bouts until he wore down the righteous realm. He just never told his soldiers to keep them at their best. That is why he retreated his troops so quickly. Now he was ready to actually take over the righteous realm. An assassin suddenly shows up and tells him that the Reinstatement realm's assault has started with Pope John leading an army towards the Northern Gate. This is bad because every Christian servant will not want to fight her. In a panic, Vlad orders all of the Far Eastern warriors to defend the Northern Gate, and for the Christian ones to do other things. Even if not real, she is still a pope. Sherlock will also help with taking care of her due to his lack of faith. Things are dire, but as Vlad puts it, the only thing they can do is fight. Don, Astolfo, Roland, and Diremud will oversee the Western Gate, Sherlock the Northern one, and Ritska the Eastern one. Jufu's arts will be rather useless now, with Vlad predicting the Reinstatement realm's uncovering of her arts. Which is true, and because of it, she started running around screaming that she wants to go home. Ritska quickly goes after her while she's still panicking, leaving the war room behind. All around her, the trees are burning and her illusions are worthless now. After Ritska and Jufu meet up, they get confronted by Kiyohime, the cause of all the fire. She's a Japanese fairy tale figure, and her whole deal is that she's a dragon girl that was once visited by a monk on a pilgrimage. She quickly fell in love with him but was rejected. He promised her that he would come back to her but never did. After that, she killed everyone at the end. In FGO, there is a lot of history with her that I can't go through. Not that they matter much. All you need to know is that she hates lying and is best girl. Here, she is just a Traum servant, so she has no knowledge of Chaldea. And right now, she's planning on killing Ritska and Jufu. After fighting for a while, the two of them retreat into the castle. The northern side isn't looking pretty either. No matter how much they try, none of the archers can hit Pope John. As a pope, she gets miracles, and these miracles can do a variety of things. From blocking arrows to opening up gates by just praying. Which is what happens to the northern gate. The western gate is also not doing well, with a holy grail backing him up. Constantine is nigh untouchable. Roland and Astolfo just can't do damage to him. Sherlock joins Vlad to overlook the gate, confirming that they managed to block the northern gate with rubble. Not that it will hold long. At this point, anyone could see where things were heading. Pope John's prophecy was right, the Reinstatement realm had won. As a last resort, Vlad orders a retreat, having used up all his cards. He apologizes to Don Quixote for sending his soldiers to death, to which Don comforts him, telling him to run while he holds the rear. To Don Quixote, the righteous realm needs Vlad far more than him. But things don't go as planned. Sancho decides to take matters into her own hands, ready to do anything to keep Don Quixote alive. Before she can say more, Ritsuka shows up and tells the gang about the Eastern Gate. After him and Jufu ran to the gate, Kiyohime reached them quite quickly. Ritsuka, having known Kiyohime for years, tried to manipulate to her. Before they really get to talking, she destroyed the Eastern Gate for good measure. An assassin showed up and told her that the Western Gate had fallen, which was a mistake. The plan was to cause Ritsuka and Jufu despair, but they didn't account for two things. 1. Ritsuka is contracted to Vlad as a master. If the Western Gate had truly fallen, he would know. And 2. He knew about Kiyohime. He told her that the assassin just lied, which alerted Kiyohime. After confirming that the Reinstatement realm did indeed just lie to her, she abandoned them, but she didn't join the Righteous realm either, because Ritsuka admitted to lying as well. Even if he is contracted to Vlad, he can only know about whether or not Vlad is dead, not what is happening around him. The Western Gate could have easily fallen. Ritsuka just called the assassin's bluff, but because of that, he had to lie. After that, Kiyohime just left to do her own things, which leads us back to the present time. The Eastern Gate has been breached, while the northern and western ones are on their last bricks. The battle has been lost. At this point, Sherlock could easily predict Sancho's next move. He warns Vlad, but it's too late. She quickly holds Vlad hostage, all for one goal: to defect to the Reinstatement realm. She doesn't really care about proper human history nor the Chaldeans. What she cares about is Don Quixote, so she will do whatever she can to keep him alive, even if he protests. Don doesn't really want to go through with this, but he is also a coward. He doesn't want to die. Even as the most well-known knight, he is still just an old man, nothing more. Sancho reminds him of the most important thing at this point. The two of them aren't heroes. They did act as Charlemagne, but were never great at it. Vlad decides to leave everything to Holmes, going along with Sancho. As the one that was meant to win this war for the Righteous Realm, he wants to take full responsibility for his failure. As Don keeps protesting, Vlad convinces him to be a traitor instead of Sancho. Vlad knows that Don won't actually stop Sancho. He just wants to appear as a noble knight, something he never was. He just wants to believe that lie, no matter how tender, no matter how exquisite.
The lie will remain a lie.
If he's going to be a traitor, he should at least be brazen about it. Otherwise, no one will ever trust him. Sancho talks to Vlad a bit as well, surprised that he can understand the thoughts of ordinary people like her and Don. For them, all this glory is terrifying. Even if Don is the most well-known knight, he isn't known for his nobility, but his foolishness. And so, Sancho drags Vlad to Constantine, with Don Quixote following silently. Don isn't a bad guy, he's just a coward. He's a good but cowardly guy, which is something that Sancho didn't account for. His goodness. What makes someone brave isn't fearlessness, but moving forward despite that fear. Sancho requests an audience with Constantine, which Constantine quickly accepts. 1,500 servants were surrounding Sancho, Vlad, and Don. Don was terrified. He was scared. But despite that, he had something he valued more than his fear. Just as Sancho was about to hand over Vlad to Constantine, Don challenged him to a duel, announcing himself as a knight, as the one who impersonated Charles the Great, and also a servant from proper human history. Constantine wasn't going to lay a hand on his princess, squire, and friend. not while he was here. Constantine accepts, telling him that he will show no mercy. And so they start to fight. Back in the castle, Sherlock tells Jufu to run back to the Righteous Realm. But here, Ritska decides to take a risk. At this point, Jufu deserves to know the truth about the Chaldeans. They tell her that they are from proper human history, the people she is rebelling against, which Jufu accepts surprisingly easily. Her need to rebel seems to be weaker than the others. Before they all rondo, Gordolf, one of the Chaldea staff, tells them that Dawn just challenged Constantine to a duel, which we're gonna go over right now. They get to fighting, but it's a very one-sided battle. Don Quixote simply isn't on Constantine's level. Constantine asks him why he chose to do this, why he is throwing his life away. If he had simply chosen to hand Vlad over, he would live in peace. Yet, he threw that chance away. At this point, Constantine will kill Don and Sancho. Don feels bad for Sancho, but also knows that this is something he can't compromise on. He ran once in the face of danger. He can't do it again. If he runs again, he will lose the one thing important to Don Quixote, to himself, his morality, his good nature, something that everyone should strive for, not just knights. He should stand his ground, even against an emperor. And so, Constantine goes in for the killing strike, ending the foolish knight's ideals right then and there. Except, he doesn't. Out of nowhere, a brilliant light had appeared, almost turning night to day. Facing reality, refusing to run from it. Knight or just plain, regular person. That's about the most awesome thing you can do. If you can do that, I've got no problems with you calling yourself Charles the Great. I'll allow it, and if I'm okay with it, nobody else has the right to complain. Constantine asks this man that we have so far known as Seton what his name is, and the man who looks strangely like Ritska calls himself Charlemagne, aka Charles the Great, the father of Europe. This time the real deal. After that, he compliments Don Quixote and orders him to leave and keep his princess safe. To which Don says no, because he wants to know if he is the true Charlemagne, so he will stay. Sancho also stays, almost crying, probably out of all the stress. Charlemagne is fine with it though, and instantly uses Noble Phantasm on Constantine. Constantine responds with his own Noble Phantasm, which is basically in reference to how he kept his castle safe for so long. And of course, that proves just how real this Charlemagne is. While both sides come out mostly unscathed, Constantine isn't looking so good. Pope John advises them to just call a retreat. At this point, they had won. There is no reason why they should keep fighting. It would only put Constantine in danger. Ritska and the gang reach the scene as well. Sherlock convinces Constantine to leave, and so the Battle of Sirmium fully ends here. Portamonte is ashamed of working against Charlemagne, but he tells her not to worry about it and just follow her heart. Ritska is very surprised that Seton was Charlemagne all along, and Charlemagne tells everyone that he is here on the behalf of Rex Magnus Carl, which is himself. Basically, this Charlemagne is actually young Charlemagne. Charlemagne the adventurer before he settled as a king. Normally he wouldn't be summonable, but under some circumstances, i.e. the moon cell, he can be summoned. He is Charlemagne without any of the father of Europe energy. Apparently, him and his emperor side got into a fight in which they were about to kill each other, but eventually reconciled. Because of that, his emperor side entrusted him with Traum, granting him a fraction of his power. So, he isn't getting powered by any grails and doesn't have a master. Because of that, his spirit origin isn't great, and he is constantly leaking out his spiritons. At most, he can only go all out 2 more times. Even that has a limit of 48 hours. After that, he will just disappear. After that though, we just get some fluff. Charlie meeting with his paladins, Vlad forgives Sancho. Little did everyone know, a while after this moment, the Reinstatement realm would fall. In the good old Revenge realm, Zhang and Kriemhild are talking. Kriemhild knows that Zhang is plotting something and probably knows more about the singularity than anyone else. More than anything, Zhang must know about the Master of Traum. After threatening him a little, like in a friendly way, Zhang decides to share a little of what he knows. The Master of Traum represents all of humankind. It's not only the best answer, but the only one. What does that even mean? Well, that's for the end of this video. Other than that, the Revenge realm also has a plan to get rid of the Reinstatement realm once and for all. After the Battle of Sirmium, now is the perfect time to strike. Both Pope John and Constantine are tired at this point, so at least one of them will die. How will they die? Remember the Revenge realm towers? Well, this is when their use is unraveled. The towers are all connected to ley lines which fills them with magical energy. They are meant to be used as batteries for one single servant. Using the magical energy stored in the tower would boost any servant greatly, and the servant it's meant to power is an archer-class servant from Japan. At this point, the Reinstatement realm's army is around 21 kilometers away from the tower, but that doesn't matter. After some preparations, the cannon was ready. This cannon was a Japanese historical figure from the 12th century, a man by the name of Minamoto no Tamatomo. He was a samurai that once sank an entire ship with a single arrow. His life wasn't all that great though, and after a lot of complications, he eventually committed seppuku. Now, why is he a giant robot dude in Fate Go? I couldn't tell you. If I had to guess, it has something to do with Ares, but I honestly have no idea. I haven't read his events, so all you need to know is that he's a cool robot samurai archer that shoots out missiles as arrows. He has always been a robot, I think, and many times tried to act like a person, but no one took him seriously. So instead he opted to act as a weapon. He didn't know why he was here, why he was about to shoot his noble phantasm, or even who he was shooting. Nor does he care. He's simply going with the flow. While he didn't know who he was about to shoot, Kriemhild did. And so the arrow was fired towards the female pope, ready to shatter her into a million bloody pieces. Constantine and Pope John, on the other hand, are none the wiser. While they are walking, Constantine starts talking about their next plans and how close they are to winning. Now that the Righteous Realm has revealed themselves to be on the side of proper human history, they should lose most of their soldiers. Only the Revenge Realm remained a problem. As he was going through all of that, he was completely ignoring Pope John, which caused her to put her foot on his foot to get his attention. She had a bad premonition. As soon as she said that, Constantine ordered all his troops to get into defensive positions. They were surrounded by Zhangju's puppets, and soon after, the sky turned red. The red of the Revenge Realm. Pope John also detected a killer noble phantasm headed their way, so she urged Constantine to use his noble phantasm again, which he did. He trusted her greatly. If she told him to jump off a bridge, he would instantly do so, expecting a trampoline. His noble phantasm recreated the walls of Constantinople, its nigh impenetrable walls. They were going to be safe from any attack, or at least they should have been. The arrow was going after Pope Joan, not Constantine. Constantine's noble phantasm had a flaw. According to legends, the reason why Constantinople's walls fell was because someone had forgotten to lock his single door. That single door spelled doom for him and his empire. Whether true or not didn't matter, only that the legend was a thing. Tomatomo's noble phantasm is insanely strong and accurate. It could easily find that gap and kill Pope Joan with a single shot. She knew this and decided to accept it. Better her than anyone else. Undesirable but not unthinkable. But before anything happened to her, Constantine moved in to protect her. If she could see what was happening, so could Constantine. Whether Pope Joan was a real person or not did not matter to Constantine. He cared for her and wanted to protect her. The best possible result Kriemhild could have gotten. The arrow pierced him fully, leaving him on death's door. You see, Pope Joan is a counterforce servant and not one summoned by the master of Traum. So when Constantine first met her, they were enemies. What surprised him was that she knew that she never existed, that she was always a figment of someone's imagination. They talked a bit, with Pope Joan being incredibly sassy, with Pope Joan also showing frustrations towards proper human history for denying her existence. After she started cussing out proper human history, Constantine had a revelation. He loved this woman. And you know what? I get it. I completely understand Constantine. I, too, would. From that moment on, he decided to reinstate her into proper human history. If he was going to rebel anyway, might as well have a good reason for it. He implored her to use him, telling her that he will affirm her existence no matter what. He wasn't even ashamed of it. He knew he looked like someone falling into a scam, but he didn't care. He just wanted the best for Pope Joan. For her, he would be a fool. He woke up at the Reinstatement realm with Pope Joan by his side, cussing him out for sacrificing himself. While his casters tried to heal him, it didn't matter. He was going to die soon anyway. Before that, he was going to make an announcement using some of Caster's magecraft. He told every Reinstatement servant that he was going to die soon. All the servants had two choices, either defect to the Revenge realm or the Righteous realm. Both are not good options. Revenge realm is the opposite of the Reinstatement realm, and the Righteous realm is on the side of proper human history. While he wouldn't recommend the Righteous realm, Pope Joan told him to be truthful and to leave all the lies behind. And so he told everyone that Pope Joan is also technically a proper human history servant, and that his whole rebellion was for her. Whether they choose righteous or revenge didn't matter to him. They can't stay. Not because they would die or anything, but because the Reinstatement realm was always about Constantine and Pope Joan. If he dies, the realm goes with him. After that, he advises Pope Joan to join the Righteous realm along with Bradamante. While Pope Joan is against it, Bradamante picks her up and starts taking her away. Pope Joan didn't want to leave. Not yet. Just a bit more. She wanted to be with Constantine. Alas, a farewell is all they can manage. The Reinstatement soldiers also don't look too shaken up by the revelations. Just as Constantine loved Pope Joan, the army loved him. Some stayed wanting to die with him, some defected into the Revenge realm, and some followed Pope Joan into the Righteous realm. Either way, this was the end of the Reinstatement realm. Here, all of Constantine's work was dissolved. In another place, completely unrelated to any of that, we have Kadoc. He is stealthily making his way to Fort Azagok with Mash helping him from Chaldea. On his way though, he meets a surprising character. Moriarty was bored of being in the background, so he decided to show up and help Kadoc for a while. He also threatens Mash to not tell any other Chaldean staff about him. If she does, he will kill Kadoc. For whatever reason, Moriarty is weirdly interested in Kadoc, and Kadoc specifically. Right now though, he is most curious about the secret of Fort Ozagok, just like Kadoc. Kadoc quickly agrees because if Moriarty wanted to, he could kill him at any moment. Kadoc also doesn't know too much about the current state of Chaldea. He just woke up from a coma at the start of Traum, so Moriarty wouldn't be able to get much information out of him either. Moriarty keeps trying to make small talk, which Kadoc hates because he's always angsty. As they reach the fort, they see that it's still guarded. Most likely, it will even be rebuilt in the future. Moriarty takes care of them instantly though, and they move along. During the fights, Kadoc observes Moriarty, but he just can't figure out what makes him immortal. Not even his clothes get affected by anything. They get into the basement of the fort, filled with cells. There are a few things that Moriarty doesn't know about, and the secret of Fort Ozagok is one of them. They find a demonic beast guarding something, and using the power of maths, Moriarty easily kills the thing. After that, they finally see what Zhang was keeping a secret. Trapped by some Taoist arts, there he was. Siegfried, the greatest dragon slayer, and also the husband of Kriemhild. Moriarty figured that it was either him or the Rheingold, and he was right, it was the hero. Siegfried isn't one of the servants of Traum. Just like Pope John, he is an ally of proper human history. Kadoc warns the Dragon Slayer to not approach Moriarty because Moriarty can turn servants into rebels. But Moriarty has no interest in doing that at this point, saying it goes against his destiny and calculations. He also decides to flex, saying that so far, everything has been going according to calculations. But Kadoc warns him that it's that arrogance that will be his downfall. In response, Moriarty merely shrugged. Moriarty left soon after, leaving Kadoc and Siegfried alone. Kadoc decides to ask him one simple question, whether or not he can fight his wife. Siegfried says yes, without hesitation. If he must, he will give it his all. Back in the Revenge Realm, Kriemhild got the grail that Constantine possessed, making her even stronger than before with 2 grails powering her up. Zhang is also aware of the fact that Siegfried escaped. Not that he would ever tell Kriemhild about him. It annoys him, but it's not the end of the world. He can manage. Little did he know, Kriemhild is now powerful enough to read the thoughts of everyone in the Revenge Realm, and so she confronts him about his secret. Zhang isn't flustered though, and simply tells her that he had to keep him a secret because if she knew about him, she would be thrown off balance. But Kriemhild has been waiting for him to show up this whole time. Not as his wife, but for revenge. You see, Kriemhild was once just a regular, normal, noble woman. Very basic. She was married to Siegfried, mostly as a political thing. It was rough because as a hero, Siegfried was always out doing whatever heroes do. Even so, she felt something towards him. Love, obsession, something like that. Not that she really remembers anymore. After Siegfried was supposedly assassinated, she lost a part of herself. Hatred began to fester in her heart, wanting to lash out at everything. Little did she know at the time, Siegfried died intentionally. It was basically his idea to be assassinated. It was to stop a coming war, which his death should have prevented. But because of Kriemhild's rage and her desire for revenge, everything went wrong anyway, with her even marrying Attila the Hun just so she can use Attila's army for war. Fury was all she had left over, and the only thing she still felt as she was killed. All of that is the fault of Siegfried. If he had just been a good husband, Kriemhild would never have gotten that far. She isn't waiting for romance, but for revenge. That is all she cares about, and she suspects that Siegfried won't hold back either. After all, he was, is, and will always be a hero. Back in the Righteous Realm, no secrets remain. Because of that, Ritska gets seated as the ruler of the Righteous Realm, despite his confusion. At the present, only 463 servants remain of the Righteous Realm, nothing compared to the Revenge Realm. Thankfully, the morale is at an all-time high, with everyone in the Righteous Realm suppressing their desire for rebellion, working for proper human history. Charlemagne, on the other hand, will stick to being the adventurer, choosing to work under Ritska. Just as Vlad starts to talk about their next plans, they get told that Reinstatement realm is no more. This surprises everyone, other than Sherlock, because of course, out of nowhere, Pope John, Bradamante, and the remaining Reinstatement soldiers show up demanding a fight. Not in a threatening way, but more like in a goofy way. Kinda silly. With their 542 troops, they want to see if the Righteous Realm is worthy of commanding them, or if they should take over themselves. After some fluff, they duel 6v6 and the Righteous Realm wins, which combines the two realms into a more powerful force. Pope Joan isn't exactly confident, and she still doesn't really like proper human history and is mostly doing this for the sake of the Reinstatement troops. Even so, Ritska decides to ask her straight up, "Will you lend us your help?" Pope Joan is taken aback by that, surprised to see that she is being relied on. She is a pope, she will do anything she can to help the weak. That is simply how she rolls, whether she likes it or not. And so this leaves the Righteous Realm with 1005 troops, and the Revenge Realm with over 1200. There is only one way they can take them down, by taking down Kriemhild as fast as possible, mostly ignoring the rest of the army. Vlad and Charlemagne get to work, putting all the big players into the front lines, aside from Dawn, who will help them from the rear. Kadoc also comes back, bringing along Siegfried, which shocks everyone. In this group, Siegfried is probably the strongest servant, with Vlad and Charlemagne being under restrictions. Kadoc also tells everyone about Moriarty, and Sherlock still can't understand anything about him. By all rights, he should be able to figure this puzzle out, but he just can't. This frustrates him to no end. He can't see a possible path to victory, either because Moriarty is an alien disciple, or because he simply can't win. Either way, it turns nighttime, with Ritska staying up late one last time. Charlemagne wanted to end the whole fake Pope thing once and for all, and for that reason, he called Pope Joan to meet with him while Ritska stayed hidden. He wants her to let it all out before the final battle. The interesting thing is that this Charlemagne and Pope Joan really aren't that different. The thing with this adventurer Charlemagne is that he's simply not as influential as Rex Magnus Carl. While they are technically the same person, they differ in that Rex Magnus Carl embodies all the more realistic parts of Charles the Great, and also the whole Father of Europe thing. That makes this Charlemagne mostly just empty legends with little substance. It's why he isn't normally summonable, because his other variant simply outshines him too much. The other Charles the Great didn't have a legendary beast, a sacred sword, or anything like that. He built his legends on politics alone, with his determination. Rex Magnus Carl is just too cool, so this Charlemagne can only be summoned under wild circumstances. Otherwise, there is just no room for him. Pope John tells him that at least people liked his stories and didn't denounce him as an imposter like her. Even so, no one denounced her out of malice, or even dislike. The only reason why she existed is because people wanted her to exist. She isn't here because proper human history didn't want her, but because it did. At the end of the day, imposter or not, it doesn't matter. Pope John wonders if Constantine knew all this would happen, to which Charlemagne tells her that he probably didn't. He would support her no matter what she did, for a reason that Charlemagne has no place saying. If she wants to know, she can ask Bradamante. She can tell her about love much better. After some dry remarks, she leaves, and Ritska and Charlemagne talk about her a bit, with Ritska promising that he will help her get past her disdain. Out of nowhere, Siegfried shows up, wanting to talk to Ritska. Charlemagne leaves to keep it private. Siegfried only wants to ask for a favor that he will know about once it's time. After Pope John left, she talked to Bradamante about what Charlemagne meant about Constantine, to which Bradamante just tells her that, most likely, her and Constantine were both in love. Pope John is kind of flustered, thinking that he must have loved her in a different way, like a friend or something similar, which was clearly not the case. She's still taken aback, but everything starts making sense to her. Her own feelings and the way Constantine treated her. It makes her happy and a little sad. Happy about her feelings, but sad that Constantine was now dead. Either way, that's human nature. To love is to grieve. Eventually, we will all grieve our loved ones. After that, we get another Sherlock scene with him trying to fathom Moriarty. Still unable. He knows that Moriarty knows something about him, but doesn't know what. Truth is, Moriarty knows everything about Sherlock Holmes, even the things that Sherlock doesn't know about himself. At this point, he doesn't even really care about who wins this next fight. Actually, he wants the righteous realm to win, because that would give him a motive to take down Sherlock once and for all. The next morning, everyone gets ready. The main problem is the archer that shoots missiles. Siegfried volunteers to tank his shots, having a nigh-immortal body. Astolfo will be in charge of taking down the archer, his speed and flight ability being the only things capable. Don will protect Vlad, Pope John and Sancho from the middle, with Jufu helping out, while the rest charge from the front, other than Diarmuid who will guard the rear. This fight is much more simple. It's all about brute force. With an army like the Revenge Realm, strategy won't do much good. And so the Battle of the Realms starts. I could not think of a better name. As the gang charges, they try to avoid as many servants as possible, trying to reach the castle as fast as possible. As they keep moving, some of the servants stay back to stall pursuing Revenge Realm troops. As they keep moving, more and more servants decide to do the same, until it is time for Diarmuid to hold the enemies back, with the help of Sean an assassin! After this, we don't see either of them ever again. In the Revenge Realm, they decide to go all out, placing Tamatomo on one of the towers. And so he fires. Little did he know, the missiles he shot would be deflected by a dragon, who also happens to be a dragon slayer. Not even a scratch. This woke up Tamatomo from his daydreams, shocking him awake. It was absurd to use swordsmanship to deflect a missile, truly ungodly. Before the casters send out orders, he charges his arrows again, this time opting to fire multiple shots at the same time. At this point, he didn't care about any orders. Even if the Revenge Realm wanted him to stop, he wouldn't. He was truly locked in. Someone tries to stop him, doesn't matter, he kills them. And so he shoots again, this time 3 missiles at the same time. After that, Astolfo hits out to try and kill Tamatomo. Meanwhile, Siegfried is left to deal with the arrows. The first arrow he erased with ease. The second arrow he deflected. But the third arrow he had to endure. He wasn't unharmed anymore, but he was mostly fine. But now, Tomatomo had something else to focus on, the beast flying towards him at Mach speed. He tries to hit Astolfo, but can't. With his noble phantasms, Astolfo awaits all his shots. The one that didn't kill him, due to the miracle casted by Pope Joan on Astolfo. As Sherlock theorizes, if they could cut off the Archer's connection to the ley lines, he would simply die. For such a large amount of power, there would have to be a great trade-off. And so, Astolfo pierced the legs of Tomatomo, leaving both of them in critical conditions. Tomatomo is fine with it though. He was probably the only servant in this singularity that had no stakes. After Astolfo and Tomatomo bicker a bit, they both die. Paladin and Samurai, both having enjoyed their fight. Next, the gang reaches the gate of the Revenge Realm. It is shut and has many spells casted on it which prevent it from opening up. For this, Roland steps up with his sacred sword Durando, which had created miracles before. He was going to open up the gates just like Pope John had done during the Battle of Sirmium. Zhang had made sure that the gate could not be opened, placing as many restrictions on it as possible. Even so, Roland screamed out, praying for the gate to open, which it didn't. The prayer required greater sacrifice. He had already given up his diamond body, all his powers, everything he had to give, and it wasn't enough. He even chose to give his life, yet it wasn't enough again. But there was one more thing that he could give up, one more thing that would give him the edge and open up this stupid gate. Out of nowhere, the gate opened, no one having any clue why. Zhang got mad thinking that it must have been the work of a traitor, but it didn't matter. The gate had opened for God knows what reason. After the righteous realm went in, the gate closed again, everyone questioning what happened but not stopping to actually think about it. Might as well call it a miracle and be done with it. After that, the gang splits into two groups, all the characters we know going to kill Kriemhild while the rest of the servants, plus Jufu, stay back and buy time. The assault group carries on with no signs of stopping, until Zhang shows up with an army of servants. Siegfried, Charlemagne, Reinstatement, and Kadoc keep going while the rest of the servants take on Zhang and his army. The four of them enter the main castle, but suddenly Kadoc gets ambushed and almost dies. But with the power of the story from like 4 years ago, he survives. Basically, he had a servant girlfriend and she shared a bit of her power with him before she died, which saved him. That gives him a bit of a power boost, but not for long. Once the magical energy of his dead girlfriend's elemental runs out, he will go back to normal. Before they finally reach Kriemhild though, they get stopped by Kiyohime. She asks Ritsuka if he wants to destroy the singularity, to which Ritsuka says yes. Because he was honest, she decides to help, burning down all the remaining servants in their way. She is truly perfect. Back in the capital of the Revenge Realm, the group that was fighting Zhang suddenly won because of the gun monk that killed Salome all that time ago. I don't really know why she was part of this story. Before anything though, Zhang kills the gun monk, distracting him long enough for Bradamante and Don Quixote to team up and kill him. But once again, this one was a puppet. Not that it matters anymore. And so the four who went after Kriemhild finally reached her. The deciding fight of this war was about to begin. Kriemhild and Siegfried were face to face. Before fighting, Siegfried wanted to make sure whether she would stop or not, and of course she wouldn't. Even if the world itself turns its back on her, she wouldn't stop. Siegfried admits to being a liar, not being honest with her at times, but at this point it was too late. They were both dead and now servants. With both servants wielding different versions of Balmud, the fight started. Kriemhild was in ecstasy, fully enjoying herself in her own madness. Siegfried, meanwhile, remained stoic, fighting as efficiently as possible, with Ritsuka backing him up. Charlemagne doesn't want to fight unless he has to because of his whole screwed up spirit origin deal. Either way, it doesn't matter. Kriemhild just fights better than Siegfried. While Siegfried should be the stronger fighter, Kriemhild has the support of two grails. Just as things start going south, Kadoc thinks of a plan. He transferred V, his dead girlfriend's elemental, to Siegfried temporarily. What V does is give its user mystic eyes, and this set of mystic eyes doesn't make the user stronger, but makes them see the weaknesses in their foes. This way, Siegfried knew the moves he had to make to really damage Kriemhild. Siegfried finally tells her that he won't hold back anymore. She mocks him, but he tells her that while he was fighting well, he wasn't really trying to kill her. Now, he will do just that. After that, they can talk more. That shakes up Kriemhild a bit, but doesn't stop her. Back when they were both alive, she truly loved him. She was pure in the sense that she believed that her love would be eternal. But that didn't happen. Instead, she got into wars, becoming a mad woman who only cares about revenge. Normally, she could have settled their differences in much less catastrophic ways, but her and her enemies both had armies, so they fought in wars instead. The war that Siegfried killed himself to stop continued because of his wife's hatred. He told her he loved her, and she believed him. Now, in her mind, he was only going through the motions, not truly caring about her in that way. It wasn't how he felt, but what he thought she wanted to hear. Nothing more. If he cared, he wouldn't have left her. If he cared, he wouldn't think that her sorrows would only end with mourning, that she would find someone else to make her happy. And yet, she was losing now. Siegfried blew away her grails, sending them to Ritska, which Ritska retrieved and sent back to Chaldea. The fight was over. But Siegfried had other plans. Plans he had told Ritska the night before, which Ritska accepted. Siegfried starts talking to Kriemhild, sharing his own feelings on the matter. He thought that Kriemhild was the kind of woman that would recover from anything, that no matter what, she would find her happiness. But his one mistake was that he didn't understand just how much she valued her love. To him, it's all really painful to look back at. Here, he fully admits to her. He was wrong. He made a mistake. He looked to Ritska, telling him that he is sorry, even if all this was agreed upon beforehand. After that, he stands in front of Kriemhild, pointing his sword at Ritska, his back towards Kriemhild. Kriemhild is shocked, confused, but Siegfried assures her. At this point, Kriemhild has no chance of winning, no chance of permanently establishing the singularity into Earth. Now, he can fight for her. He had once abandoned her for the world, for the sake of peace. Never again. Now he was going to fight for her, even if it's against the very world heroes like him are meant to protect. Kriemhild gets flustered, not knowing how to handle any of what was happening, so Siegfried tells her that while he was wrong about her, she too was wrong about him. What's so strange for fighting for the one you love? He smiled, reaching his hand towards her. It was so comical that she couldn't help but smile. She grabbed his hand. After he flirts with her for a bit, they hold their swords, together, ready to fight Ritska. But this fight wasn't really going to be a fight, more like a parting ritual, a proper send-off if you will. For once in his singularity, Kriemhild felt truly happy, and so they both get killed by Ritska after a short fight, holding each other as they return to the Throne of Heroes, perfectly happy and content. Finally, the three realms are united. With the three grails out of the picture, the singularity would soon disappear. Kiyohime shows up, says her goodbyes, and disappears. Kadoc, Reinstatement, and Charlemagne reunite with Sherlock and the rest of the gang, but weirdly, the singularity had no signs of going away. After all, there was still one more foe that was lurking about. One more foe that was still around. Moriarty was still alive and well. Nothing about him yet known. Thankfully, it wouldn't take long to take care of that problem because he hacked the Chaldeans' intercoms, yapping once more. Now that the Chaldeans united the three realms, everything was coming to an end. It was all for a ritual. He tells them that because of all the things they did, the singularity will now remain forever. Don Quixote speaks up though, telling Moriarty that this wasn't all meaningless. Whether or not the singularity will perish is another thing, but at the very least, the Chaldeans are still alive. That is one win. One W. After that, him, along with Sancho, start disappearing, having fulfilled their jobs. Finally, ever since Atlantis. He leaves Minerva, the Atlantis owl, to the Chaldeans, letting it scout for them for just a bit longer. After that, Moriarty continues telling the Chaldeans that his main goal is a confrontation with Sherlock. Naturally, Sherlock accepts. Moriarty tells them where they should meet him. In the middle of all the three realms, there is a waterfall, constantly flowing, ever large. He calls it Reichenbach Falls, for the hilarity of it. After that, he cuts himself off, leaving the Chaldeans alone. Pope Joan tells everyone about what she made of him. Throughout the singularity, Moriarty visited the Reinstatement realm and the Revenge realms, mostly hanging out, telling them to unite already. Even so, Pope Joan got the feeling that he never really cared about Traum nor its servants. He only really cared about Chaldea. After that, Bradamante and Pope Joan disappear as well, every servant slowly returning to the throne. For whatever reason though, Bradamante still wants to rebel deep down, even after all the realms got united. Likely, the influence of the Master of Traum. The two leave quickly though, to the Throne of Heroes, even Pope Joan mostly content with everything. Vlad too doesn't really have anything to do anymore, decides to leave as well. His only job of being a general being redundant at this point. He says farewell, but unlike the others, simply returns to Chaldea, being from Chaldea originally, to heal his wounds. Which leaves us with Reinstatement, Kadoc, Sherlock, and Charlemagne. As the gang starts following Minerva to the Reichenbach Falls, they see Jufu, but not really. Just a weird puppet of her. She too disappeared off screen, but wanted to leave a message, which is why she left a weird puppet of herself there. In the letter, she goes straight to the point. She hypothesizes that every servant has a different master. Basically, there isn't a master of Traum, but masters of Traum. Using her own Taoist arts, she tried to find out more about the feelings of her own master. It came out as kind, forgiving, understanding, why, but still can't forgive. But when she tried doing the same with a different servant, it went as kill, unforgivable, they can pay with their lives and it won't be enough, why. Every other servant also had something different. She doesn't know what this means, but knew that she had to share it. The letter ends, but Sherlock still can't decipher it. He still can't understand the singularity. Charlemagne urges everyone to just keep going because he could disappear at any second. On the way, Sherlock confronts Kadoc about his suspicions. He knew that Kadoc suspected him and wanted to get it out of the way. He asks if Kadoc still suspects him, but Kadoc isn't sure. Again, I don't know how to approach these Sherlock parts because they need a lot of context and really should have their own video. Kadoc asks about old Moriarty, which appears in Shinjuku, but that's a completely different storyline about its own things. So sadly, I'm going to have to skim over most of the Sherlock stuff. I will try to keep it entertaining though. Basically, this Moriarty and the Moriarty Chaldea knows are different, and this one doesn't care about Reinstatement. Young Moriarty tries to be evil, while his archer version simply breathes evil. Let's leave it at that. Eventually, the gang reaches Reichenbach Falls, Sherlock getting kind of nostalgic. In his books, this is where his final confrontation with Moriarty happened. Charlemagne pops out of his spirit form ready to fight, but Sherlock stops him, wanting to take on Moriarty alone for now. Sherlock leaves the gang ready to confront Moriarty by himself. Truthfully, this Moriarty has no memories of Sherlock. He is young, he only became rivals with Holmes once he got old. He only knows that Sherlock is meant to be his greatest enemy, but not what that actually entails, which is why he wanted to fight him for so long. And so they fight. I promise at some point I will make a Sherlock video. This is all really cool, but I just can't explain why, because that in itself is an hour-long video. If I start talking about what happens here, I will just sound like a madman, so instead I'm mostly going to skim through this part of the story. After the fight, Sherlock figures everything out, about his own role, and also the fact that he is a foreign god disciple. It was too late though, and he was going to die soon. He was a traitor, but forgot everything in order to resist. He figured out Moriarty too. His goal was always Chaldea. He doesn't tell Chaldea though, because he knows Moriarty will just reveal everything soon anyway. Instead, he decides to tell the Chaldeans the secret to Moriarty's immortality. Moriarty wields the power of the Norns, the 3 Norse goddesses of fate. After he reveals that, Moriarty pushes him one last time, making him tumble down to the bottom of the waterfall. Now that he knew the truth about everything, he had to disappear. Not because Moriarty thinks so, but because he himself thinks so. What makes all this so impactful is that this is the culmination of a lot of things coming together. Years that we have traveled with this character. And I'm not gonna talk about it because it isn't about Traum, but the entirety of Fate Go. So now that Sherlock is out of the picture, let's talk about the final battle of Traum. Reinstatement, Kadoc, and Charlemagne versus Moriarty. Finally, Moriarty reveals his goals. He wants to take control of Chaldea. Remember back during the Salome arc when Moriarty invaded Reinstamen's dreams? He said that he wants Reinstamen's seat. This is what he meant. He believes that he can do what Chaldea does far better. He said it best, the Chaldeans are too kind for what they are doing. Eventually the weight of their sorrows will crash down on them, but Moriarty is the epitome of evil. He is evil personified. If anyone can handle the weight of countless worlds, it's him. And to do that, he needs one thing. For Kadoc to become his master. He wants Kadoc instead of Reinstatement because Kadoc is more sarcastic? Maybe? Basically because he finds Kadoc more passionate. Kadoc fits him more and is more likely to go along with his plans. Kadoc refuses though, not really wanting to betray Chaldea anymore, but Moriarty assures him that he won't betray anyone. Actually, Moriarty himself will do the betraying. He is a foreign disciple, not foreign god disciple. The foreign god did summon him, but he doesn't have to obey her, because he has cut that fate. With the power of the 3 Norse goddesses of fate, he could easily do that. That is what made him immortal. He kept changing his fate every time he was attacked to not get hit. Kadoc starts thinking, this is actually not too bad of a deal. With him, the Chaldean's quest might get easier, and Moriarty seems really serious about his goals as well. Except, for that, he would have to throw away his pride. His only servant was his girlfriend, and he will do whatever it takes to keep it that way. So he decides to reject him in a roundabout way. He accepts his proposal on 2 conditions. 1, he has to fight Reinstatement and win, and 2, he has to accept the result no matter what. He agrees and both sides get ready. Reinstatement and Charlemagne versus Moriarty. Except, Remember at the very start I said that Chaldea could bring 3 servants to Traum? One was Sherlock, the other was Vlad, and the final one was Mash. Mash couldn't join until now, and so Ritsuka calls Mash through singularity, making it a 3v1. And so the fight begins, and Moriarty lost. In actuality, it wasn't a 3v1 but a 4v1. In a way he least expected, Kadoc helped the Chaldeans. He gave the last bit of power he had to Mash, making her see his weaknesses. With it, she could cut whatever threats of fate he put up, making it so that he could be hit. With that, and the alarming power of Charlemagne, it was no wonder that he lost. Still, he accepted the results. After all, he did say he would. But there was still one more thing he could do. Beg for his life. He had a good defense to keep himself alive. Once, Sherlock killed him, so now that he has killed Sherlock, they're even. Doesn't really matter though, he is now in the same state as Charlemagne, barely hanging on to dear life. Soon he's going to die anyway, but before that, he can help the Chaldeans a bit. He always wanted Chaldea to succeed, he just wanted to be the one in charge of things. He knows most about the singularity and can lead them straight to a lot of answers. Before that though, Charlemagne finally runs out of magical energy and disappears, leaving the rest to Moriarty. And so he starts taking them deep into the righteous realm, in what would normally be the state of Nevada. With the help of Minerva, they start going to the final place. After a while though, Minerva finally stops working, the final remnant of Lost World 5, vanishing. Moriarty leads the rest of the way. After a few days, they finally reach the spot. The middle of the desert. After open sesaming in the middle of nowhere, the ground opens up and they start walking down some stairs. If you couldn't guess already, they are in Area 51. After walking down quite far, they see a corpse. The corpse of Zhang, the real one this time. In a not so complicated way, Zhang was a zombie, but because he was a zombie, he couldn't get magical energy from his master. Because of that, he cloned himself a bunch of times, making sure that those clones didn't know about the truth of the matter, so as not to disappear. As long as his main body remained, his clones would pop up every now and then. He was sort of the mastermind behind all the wars, his clones leading the Traum servants into war. All for the sake of his master. The master of Traum created the singularity and Zhang cultivated it. After that, Moriarty got rid of his body, leaving himself as the only Traum servant remaining. After that, he leads them to a starry hallway. Finally, the Master of Traum was about to be revealed. As they reach the big door, Moriarty stops, talking about this master for a bit. This master's goal was to bring retribution to proper human history. He once told Kadoc that this master had every right to do what he was doing, but that wasn't entirely true. In reality, he had no choice, assigned duty, and personal responsibility. Even if he didn't want to, his existence shifted to seek revenge. Zhang did all he could for the sake of this master, which led them to cultivate the singularity. It all started in the US, the state of Nevada, in 2019, in Area 51. Before the incineration of humanity, before the part 1 of Fate Go ended, the singularity was created. And so, he opened the door, and inside was an operating room, a lab of sorts, cutting-edge technology all around. Before we get to see anything, Moriarty starts vanishing like the other Traum servants. His time is almost up. Before that, he introduces the Chaldeans to the Master of Traum, the being behind the singularity, a being that arrived on Earth around 100 years ago, subjected to countless experiments, soaking his hatred for humanity. This was Test Subject E. The story of Traum ends here on a cliffhanger, and I'm gonna say it, I like this cliffhanger. Yes, it's weird to just end it without having the final answer given out, but something about this ending really stirs my imagination. It makes me want to think about what is going to happen next in LB7. So instead of, admittedly rightfully, complaining about this ending, I'm going to do what is expected of me. Theorize. Game theory. Not really, mostly I'm just putting together all we know. If you don't actually read FGO, this part doesn't really concern you, but might as well stick around, you have gone this far after all. The sole remaining mystery is the identity of Test Subject E. Clearly, we can tell that he is some sort of alien with all the alien connections and him coming down to Earth 100 years ago. We also know that his first servant was Zhang Ju. Moriarty was summoned by the foreign god, not him. He was put through experiments in Area 51 by the US government, and he is hateful to an extent. Now, what happened around 100 years ago? Well, the one thing that comes to mind is everything around World War I. The war that advanced technology by decades, meant to end all wars. If after that war the US came across an alien, they would be in prime position to experiment on it, and they totally would. While I say alien, it could be any kind of alien, not necessarily from outer space. Maybe like a dimensional alien, I don't know. Something not from Earth. One problem though is that Area 51 was built around 1950, which means that Test Subject E was moved to Area 51 at some point and was experimented on somewhere else at first. Another thing is its name, Test Subject E. That means that most likely there were 4 other, possibly more, of its kind around, but now they are nowhere to be found. Next is Jufu's letter. She theorized that there were multiple Masters of Traum, but here we only have Test Subject E. One theory is that multiple test subjects were fused into one as an experiment, which is why Jufu's divination turned out weird. We know that Test Subject E is the Master. The only way there could be other Masters is if Test Subject E has multiple beings etched onto its very being, its soul. Near the start of the singularity, we get a scene about the thoughts of someone. That part never gets explained. A 4-letter person can't understand another 4-letter person. In the ratio of translation, the numbers are different, but in the JP version, it's just 1 letter, so could be anything. This 4-letter being is suffering and kind of apathetic. The only thing they can do is sing. After that, we get some more secret thoughts that clearly belong to Sherlock. So the other part could also be related to him, but it could also be Test Subject E or anything really. I truly don't know what to make of it. There's also the alien god, of course, and the alien priestess, but there is nothing that really links him to either of those two, so I can't really say anything about that. Next, we have David Bluebook. From the start of part 2 of Fate Go, he is one of the only humans that were still around, still alive. In every Lost build, we would get a glimpse into his journey through the bleached earth, until finally he reached Area 51, the only land not bleached. He rode his motorcycle from Australia to the US, somehow, and in Lost Build 5, we get our final glimpse of him. Before the bleaching, he was mostly a regular guy, except that he had photographic memory and didn't really like socializing. Still, he had friends, so he wasn't really a social outcast. Once he reached Area 51, his food ran out and his motorbike was also about to die. Once entered, he began exploring, which I'm pretty sure is the first time the name test subject E is brought up. According to documents, he flew into New Mexico. In 2018, his aircraft carrier burnt up as he reached Earth, possibly by himself as written in the notes. This is weird because we know that in reality, test subject E has been around for around 100 years. After the Air Force found him, they flash froze him in order to keep him alive, as he was in a gruesome state. The US did whatever experiments they could to keep the thing alive, to heal it. They observed, saw what reactions corresponded to pain, what reactions corresponded to joy. To measure its endurance, they burnt it, froze it, melted it, attached things to it, stirred its intestines, cut off parts of its body, measured signals from the organ they assumed to be the brain. Everything. What could be considered the crystallization of human history, all on a still living subject. The experiments that were done to save it were now being done to exploit it. The cells that made up its body were made of things that didn't exist on Earth, so it was of great boon. At first, the experiments were started for the good of both humanity and this alien subject. But the Area 51 researchers soon realized that with every experiment, it kept emitting some sort of signals, likely cries for help. So they thought that if they kept bringing harm to it, more test subjects would show up. The bleaching of the Earth wasn't natural, it was a man-made tragedy. Or was it really? David was suspicious of all of this and began searching for this test subject E. And after days of searching, he found the room. At this point, he was dying of hunger and thirst, but he had to know the truth. He pressed on and finally entered the room. On top of the operation table laid a dead tree thing.
Hey there, it's about time you showed up, Lulu.
I have no clue who the weird man who shot Blue Book is. He isn't there when Chaldean arrives, unless he's the nerves on the ground, or that could just be Blue Book, I don't know. It's someone with a gun, so it's not Zhang. Another thing is the name of the singularity. Traum, a German word for dream, for an American singularity. The only Germanic influence in the singularity is Kriemhild, so I don't know why it's German. It's being called dream could be alluding to the fact that the whole singularity is a dream of test subject E, made by Zhang. I don't know, just a theory. Either way, we are coming to the end of the video. It wasn't until I started writing this script that I realized just what the focus of Traum is. It's about love, and I don't mean that in a whole way, I mean specifically romantic love. How different people deal with it and what they do for it. I mean, the leaders of the three realms were all in some sort of romantic relationship. Sure, you could make a case that Sancho and Don Quixote aren't really like that, but I could see it to an extent, with Sancho being Don Quixote's princess. With Constantine and Kriemhild, it's obvious. Salome's whole thing is that when she starts respecting someone, she sees them as John the Baptist, the man she loved. But she couldn't love Ritska because of how unheroic he is, which actually saved him. Kiyohime was a weird choice until you go with the whole romance plot thing. Bradamante also can't stop talking about Ruggiero. It's quite a lot. Really noticeable compared to other storylines. And for this, I'm planning on doing another Arknights video, so if you have any suggestions, I'm open to them. Thinking of doing Break the Ice with a focus on the Doctor and Silver Ash, but might do something else if there is a better option. Like, subscribe, dislike, comment, give me engagement. This video took way too long to make. Now, excuse me as I leave to go to You know, it's her beauty that's making me like this. Now excuse me as I leave to go to Kiyohime to kiss her and have sex.